I never imagined that the moment which would put a crack through my relationship with my sister would involve something as ordinary as looking after a 4-year-old. But there I was, standing in the kitchen of my flat with my phone in my hand, wondering whether saying no to my own family made me a horrible person, or whether I was finally, for once, refusing to let myself be used. The truth is, none of it began with that moment. It started months earlier, with what seemed like a simple favor, and somehow turned into something I still find myself replaying in my head when the house is quiet at night. My sister and I have always had one of those relationships that seems perfectly normal from the outside, but feels far more tangled when you're the one living it. Growing up, she was always the confident one, the charming one, the one who could hold a whole room without even trying whenever we had relatives round for Sunday lunch or Christmas dinner. I was the quieter sibling, the one who usually ended up helping Mum clear the plates and stack the dishwasher, while my sister stayed at the table, making everyone laugh with another story. Even with all that, I always loved her deeply. When she had her daughter 4 years ago, I remember standing in that hospital room and holding that tiny little bundle in my arms. Something shifted in me in that moment. My niece instantly became one of the brightest parts of my life. She had these enormous, curious eyes and a laugh so big and warm it seemed to fill every corner of a room. So whenever my sister needed help watching her, I never really thought twice. Usually it was small things. An hour here, an afternoon there, sometimes a full day if my sister had a long booking with a client. She works as a makeup artist, and because she does a lot of weddings, events, and occasional editorial shoots, her schedule is all over the place. Some days she works from home. Other days she's driving all the way across the city or out into the countryside for bridal parties and photo sessions. Most of the time it was manageable. I'd collect my niece, bring her back to my flat, and we'd watch cartoons, draw pictures on the coffee table, or try baking biscuits that always ended up slightly too brown because she insisted on helping with every single step, including touching the oven knob like she was running a television cooking show. Those days were actually lovely. That's why, when my sister rang me late last year to ask for a bigger favor, I didn't question it. I remember the moment clearly. I was at my desk, halfway through answering work emails, when my phone buzzed. Her name came up on the screen. When I answered, she sounded a bit stressed, but also excited. She told me she'd been offered a job out of town, a few days away. Apparently it was a makeup contract that could really open doors for her career. She said she almost never accepted work that took her far from home because of her daughter, but this one felt too important to turn down. Then she asked whether I could look after my niece while she was gone. At first I hesitated, not because I didn't want to help, but because the timing was honestly awful. I already had meetings arranged for that weekend. 2 work appointments I'd been trying to pin down for weeks. Still, the way she explained it made it sound important, bigger than a normal job, like the sort of opportunity that might genuinely change things for her. And she was my sister, so I said yes. I remember hanging up and opening my calendar straight away, shifting things around and canceling those appointments. It annoyed me in the moment, but I told myself it was temporary. Family helps family. That was the mindset I carried into that weekend. Friday morning, she dropped my niece off at my flat. She looked rushed, dragging a little suitcase behind her and glancing down at her phone every few seconds as if she was already late. She thanked me quickly, hugged her daughter, and told me she'd be back by Sunday evening. Everything felt normal. The first day actually went well. My niece and I spent the afternoon in the park. She must have gone down the slide 50 times. At one point, she pointed up at the sky and tried very seriously to convince me that one of the clouds looked exactly like a dinosaur. Later that evening, we made spaghetti together. Or at least something close to it. Most of my role involved stopping pasta from ending up all over the floor, while she laughed like it was the funniest thing she had ever seen. Saturday was much the same. Cartoons in the morning, coloring books all over the living room floor, tiny plastic toys somehow appearing in every corner of my flat, no matter how many times I gathered them up. It was tiring, but also oddly sweet. By Sunday morning, I'd already started mentally preparing to hand her back that evening and get my normal routine back. Then, around mid-morning, my phone rang. It was my sister. The second I answered, I could hear something in her voice. That careful, slightly rehearsed tone people use when they're about to ask for more than they originally said. She told me she needed to extend the trip. Only a little. Instead of coming home Sunday night, she'd actually be back Tuesday morning. Apparently there had been complications with the job. My stomach dropped the moment she said it. That meant rearranging everything all over again. I had work commitments on Monday that now became impossible, but I didn't want to make life harder for her if she was under pressure away from home and trying to manage something important for her career. So I swallowed my frustration and told her it was all right. Inside, though, irritation had already started creeping in. Still, I kept going. Monday came and went. Tuesday morning finally arrived. I remember feeling relieved, mostly because I'd barely slept. My niece had woken up twice, crying after a nightmare during the night, and by morning, I felt like my head was full of fog. Then, around mid-morning, my sister finally turned up. She knocked on the door looking surprisingly relaxed for someone who had supposedly just come back from a stressful work trip. She hugged her daughter, thanked me quickly, and started collecting her things. But something about the whole situation felt off. Maybe it was the fact that she didn't look tired at all. Maybe it was how casual she seemed. Or maybe it was just that small instinct in my gut telling me something didn't add up. While she was busy helping my niece put her shoes on, I glanced over at the bag she'd set down by the door. Without thinking too much about it, I unzipped it. Inside, there was almost nothing. No makeup kit, no brushes, no products, nothing that looked as though it had been used for work. Just clothes and a half-empty bottle of water. That uneasy feeling in my stomach tightened instantly into a knot. So once she had my niece ready, I asked her a simple question. How was the job? She paused, only for a second. Then she laughed, not nervously, not awkwardly, more like the kind of laugh someone gives when they think the answer should be obvious. And she shrugged and said, almost like she was joking, "A trip's a trip, isn't it? Besides, aren't you happy you got extra time with your niece? You're always saying how much you love spending time with her." The way she said it made something click in my head, because she still hadn't actually answered me. And suddenly the realization hit me so hard my stomach sank. She hadn't been away for work at all. For a second, I honestly thought maybe I'd misunderstood her. I stood there in the doorway of my flat, my niece holding her mother's hand and humming to herself, completely unaware that the whole room had just changed. My sister was still smiling, like she had made some harmless little joke. But the more I replayed her words in my head, the heavier my chest felt. I tried to keep my voice calm. "So, you didn't go for the job?" She tilted her head slightly, as if she couldn't understand why I was asking. Then she laughed again, softer this time. "Oh, come off it," she said. "It's basically the same thing." That answer hit me like cold water, because it wasn't an answer at all. It was a dodge. My mind started fitting everything together right there in real time. The empty bag, the complete lack of work supplies, the fact that she hadn't mentioned a single detail about the job, and most of all, the way she'd extended the trip with barely any explanation. I felt something bitter rise in my throat. "Wait," I said slowly, trying hard to keep my voice steady. "Were you actually working?" She rolled her eyes slightly, like I was making a scene over nothing. "Why does it matter?" she said. Just hearing those words made my stomach twist harder. Why does it matter? Because I canceled work meetings. Because I rearranged my entire week. Because I spent 4 straight days looking after a small child, under the impression I was helping my sister with something important. That's why it mattered. So I asked again, "Did you actually have a job out of town?" This time she sighed, clearly irritated. Then she shrugged. "No," she said casually. "Not really." For a moment, I didn't say a word. I just stared at her. It felt like the whole flat had gone strangely quiet. Even my niece had stopped humming and was now looking up at both of us with that curious little expression children get when they sense something odd is happening. My sister kept talking as if none of this was a big deal. "I just needed a few days," she said. "I've been stuck at home for months. I wanted to get away for a bit." Her tone was so relaxed it almost made me question my own reaction. Almost. Then the frustration finally caught up with me. "So you lied," I said. She waved a hand in the air like she was brushing away a fly. "Relax," she said. "I knew if I told you the truth, you'd say no." That sentence landed harder than anything else she'd said, because she wasn't even pretending to feel guilty. She admitted it openly, like she was proud of having found a clever way around me. I could feel heat rising into my neck. "You could have just asked," I said. She shrugged again. "But then you wouldn't have helped. And the worst part was, she was probably right. If she'd rung me and said, 'I want to go away for 4 days and leave my child with you so I can have a break,' I probably would have hesitated, not because I don't love my niece, but because that is a huge thing to ask, and because she had never asked me for something like that before. Instead, she wrapped it up as a career opportunity and made me feel like I was supporting something important, and that difference mattered. At least it mattered to me. I tried to explain that. "I canceled 2 work meetings," I told her. "I moved everything around because you said this was important." She gave a small laugh. "You're being dramatic," she said. That word made my chest tighten even more. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't insulting her. I was just trying to explain why I felt used. But to her, my reaction was the problem. "I thought you loved spending time with her," she added, nodding toward her daughter. That was the moment I realized there was no point continuing, because she kept twisting the whole thing, as if the issue wasn't that she had lied, as if the issue was simply that I dared to be upset about it. I took a breath and rubbed my forehead, trying not to lose my temper. "This isn't about her," I said quietly. But she had already picked up her bag. "Whatever," she said. Then she opened the door. My niece turned back before leaving and gave me the biggest smile. "Bye," she said cheerfully. I forced a smile of my own, even though my chest felt tight. "Bye, sweetheart," I said. Then the door shut, and just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. Because after that, life returned to normal on the surface. I still saw my niece now and then. We still had the occasional family dinner at Mom's. But something in me had changed. Every time my sister asked for a favor after that, a small voice in the back of my mind asked the same question. Is she telling the truth this time? I hated feeling like that. But trust is strange. Once it cracks even slightly, you start noticing everything. Months passed. Eventually, the tension faded enough that I stopped replaying the whole thing every day. Until last week. That's when my phone buzzed again. My sister's name flashed up on the screen. I answered casually, expecting something ordinary. But the moment she began speaking, that familiar knot formed in my stomach. She told me she'd been offered another job. This one, she said, was just for a day. Not out of town, not overnight. Just a full day's booking. Then she asked, whether I could watch my niece again. My mind instantly flashed back to the previous time. The cancelled meetings, the lie, the way she'd admitted it so casually. And the thing that bothered me most of all, she had never truly apologized. I stayed quiet for a moment before I answered. I don't think I can, I said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she said something I didn't expect. This one is real. The way she said it sounded almost offensive, as if she already knew exactly what I was thinking. She started listing details. Where the job was, who the client was, how long she'd be gone. She even sent me a screenshot of the booking confirmation, but the truth was, none of that changed the feeling in my chest, because the issue wasn't whether this booking was real. The issue was that the last time she asked me for help, she lied to get it, and that memory still sat inside me like a stone. So I said no. I told her she should probably start finding a babysitter now, since the booking was still a week away. That's when her tone changed completely. She went quiet for a second. Then she sighed. "You're seriously going to be this petty?" she said. That word hit me like a slap. "I'm not being petty," I replied.
"Yes, you are," she shot back. "You're punishing me for something that happened months ago."
I could feel my heartbeat speeding up. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I just don't want to be put in that position again." But by then, she wasn't really listening. Her voice sharpened. "So you'd rather I turn down work than help your own sister?" That sentence hung there between us. And suddenly I felt like the villain in her version of the story. Like I was the selfish one. Like saying no to one favor meant I didn't care about family at all. But underneath all of that, one thought kept repeating itself in my head. She had a week, a whole week, to arrange someone else. This wasn't an emergency. And yet somehow, I was still being painted as the bad one.
That's exactly why I've been sitting here replaying all of it ever since.
Because part of me thinks I'm being perfectly reasonable. And part of me wonders whether I really did go too far by saying no. The conversation didn't end there. After she called me petty, the silence stretched for a few seconds. I could hear faint noise in the background on her end. Maybe the telly. Maybe my niece playing with something. It made the whole moment feel weirdly ordinary, even though my chest was tightening more and more every second. I tried again to keep my voice steady.
"I'm not trying to punish you," I said, "but you lied to me last time."
She exhaled loudly into the phone, the sort of sigh people give when they think they're dealing with someone impossible. "Oh my God," she muttered. "You're still hung up on that?" Still hung up on that. The words made my jaw clench. Because from her perspective, it was obviously some tiny thing that happened ages ago and should have been forgotten by now. But from my perspective, it wasn't tiny at all. It wasn't just about babysitting. It was about the fact that she manipulated me into agreeing. "I canceled work for you," I reminded her quietly.
"You canceled 2 meetings," she corrected immediately, like she'd been waiting to throw that back at me. "You act like you gave up your whole life."
That stung more than I expected. Not because those meetings were the most important thing in the world, but because she was minimizing the effort I'd made for her. "You didn't even apologize," I said. There was another pause. Then she spoke again, slower this time.
"Fine," she said flatly. "I'm sorry if you feel like I lied."
If you feel like I lied.
That wasn't an apology.
That was the sort of apology people make when they want the conversation over, without admitting they did anything wrong. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the tension building behind my eyes.
"I'm serious," I said. "I just don't want to be in that position again."
She laughed again, only this time, it wasn't amused. It sounded bitter. "You know what?" she said. "Forget it." Then her voice turned colder. "At least now I know where I stand." That sentence hit me in a way I didn't expect.
Because it sounded like she'd turned my refusal into something much bigger. Like my saying no to babysitting meant I didn't care about her, or my niece, or any of them.
"That's not what this is," I said quickly.
But she'd already decided what story she wanted to tell us, so.
"No," she replied.
It is.
Then she said something I still haven't managed to forget. I would never do this to you. The irony nearly made me laugh, because she already had done something to me. But saying that out loud felt useless, so I stayed quiet. A few seconds later, she hung up, just like that. The call was over. I sat there on the sofa, staring at my phone, feeling as though the room had somehow shrunk around me. Part of me was furious. Another part of me felt guilty. That's the strange thing about family conflict. Even when you know you have a point, there's always a voice in the back of your mind asking whether you should have just kept the peace. The next few days felt odd. Normally, my sister and I text fairly often, usually about silly little things my niece has done. A picture she's drawn, something funny she's said. But after that phone call, there was nothing. Complete silence. At first I told myself it didn't matter. She probably just needed time to cool down. But as the days passed, that silence started to feel heavy. Then something else happened. Mum called me, and the moment I saw her name come up on my screen, I felt that sinking feeling in my stomach, because family arguments have a way of spreading. When I answered, she sounded casual at first, asked how work was going, asked how I'd been, made small talk for a few minutes. Then, in a quieter voice, she asked the question I'd already been expecting. Why won't you help your sister? There it was, straight to the point. I leaned back against the sofa and shut my eyes for a second. She told you? I asked. Well, of course she did, Mum said. She's really upset. Of course she was. Because in her version of events, I probably sounded like some selfish brother refusing to help with childcare for no good reason. So I explained what had really happened. I told Mum about the last time I looked after my niece, about how my sister said it was a work trip, about how it turned out to be a lie. Mum listened quietly until I'd finished. But when I stopped talking, her response wasn't what I hoped for. She just needed a break, she said gently. That sentence twisted something in my chest all over again. I understand that, I said, but she should have told me the truth. Mum sighed. You know what your sister's like, she said. She's been overwhelmed. I stared up at the ceiling while she spoke, because suddenly the whole focus of the conversation had shifted. Instead of talking about the lie, we were now talking about my sister's stress. I still helped her, I said. I had my niece for 4 days. And you're brilliant with her, Mum replied. She adores you. I sat there in silence, because once again the situation was being reshaped in a way that made my boundary sound selfish. Mum kept going. Families help each other, she said. There it was, the classic line. And logically, I understood it. But emotionally, it felt unfair, because helping each other should involve honesty and respect. Lying to someone so they'll do what you want doesn't fit into that.
I'm not saying I'll never babysit again, I said carefully. I just said no this time.
Mum paused. Then she said something that made that knot in my stomach pull even tighter. She might have to turn the job down. Those words hung in the air. And just like that, the guilt started creeping in again. Because now the story had shifted even further. Now it sounded like my decision would directly cost my sister an opportunity. But at the same time, she had a week, a whole week. This wasn't some last-minute emergency. I think she can find someone else, I said. Mum didn't sound convinced. She trusts you, she replied. That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended, because trust was exactly the thing that had been broken. And yet somehow, I was the one being asked to prove mine. Over the next few days, I kept wondering whether I'd handled it badly. Maybe I should have just helped again. Maybe saying no really was petty. But every single time I replayed the original lie in my head, that same horrible feeling came back. That feeling of being manipulated. And once you recognize that feeling properly, it becomes very hard to ignore. Still, I kept thinking about my niece, about how excited she always is when she comes over, about the way she runs straight into my arms, shouting my name. That's the part that hurts most, because none of this is her fault, and yet she's the one who might get caught in the middle. So now I'm left sitting here, wondering whether I set a healthy boundary, or whether I accidentally created a much bigger problem in my family than I ever meant to. I'm still trying to make sense of all of it. What would you have done if you were in my position? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this and follow what happens next, make sure you subscribe.